First thing I tend to do with any sort of edging is most steel, certainly in the UK you get, comes in this covered with this protective layer of whatever this stuff is. And what you do is just take the first layer off. It's very, very quick, simple pass with something like an 80 grit, 120 grit, anything like that, just to lift it off. It doesn't take much work at all. Certainly no need to bite in deep into the material here. So lift that off and then start to think about how you mark up the insides here, which we'll do next. So first thing I'm going to do then to start this edge inside is obviously we want this material to go forwards. So I'm going to mark in the back here where I want it to be. Now, there's no hard and fast rule to this, just remember to jot this down somewhere so when you do the other one you make the same size. So I'm going to go for about a finger's width throughout. There we go, that's all I'm going to do. And I'll just make a mental note of that. It's about 15 mil, so that's 6/8 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch there, I think. So I'm just going to jot that down on the board here. There we are, 15 mil. So when I come to do the next one later, I'll do it about the same. Now, what's going to happen is as I push this down, it's going to pull it open. So I also want to make a note of that measurement from there to there. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can simply just measure it and take a note. It's 14.5 centimeters or about 5 3/4 inches. What I like to do a little bit more is just, again if I can find my chalk now, is just take a measurement like that. It just makes things a bit simpler. If they're hot later, rather than trying to get rulers onto the surface and so on, I can just offer it up even with tongs, put it on there and see if I'm within the ballpark of where I need to be, because this will get pulled open. Now you can do this hot or you can do it cold. Hot is certainly a bit simpler, so we'll move this one warm, I think. But you can do the same thing, it just takes a few more hammer blows and you have to go steady. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to weaken this material across here a bit. I just want to stretch it so that it moves a bit easier, because as I pull that down there, like I say, it's going to pull those in, and then as you get elsewhere it's going to pull it in all sorts of directions. So I just want to weaken this bit of material here. So the first thing I like to do then is just do a couple of passes, mostly through the middle here, because that's where most of the stretching is going to take place, with a hammer that I've shaped like this. You can see it was a flat-faced hammer like this one, and all I've done is change the face of the hammer so that it's a bit more curved. This one will flatten that, whereas this one won't. So what I'm going to do then is just open this up here. I don't want to go beyond the line I've marked really. I just want to stay in there and just give it a few hits just to weaken it up so that it moves nicely. Be sure to keep the piece flat. You don't want to lift it up and end up bending it back. If anything, take it the other way. And that's it there. Don't have to go mad, don't want to weaken this material at all really. When you take it over, that'll put some strength back into it. Got a little bit of the odd little jump on the edge there, so I'll give that a quick pass just to make sure it's nice and smooth. Then we'll get the heat out and we'll move to the next part. What I've just done then as well, something I forgot to mention earlier, is obviously where I'm going to be using heat on this, the marker pen that I use there will burn away pretty quick, to be fair. So what I've done is I've just scratched the line into there with a scribe, just so I can see it and get a better gauge for where I am as I get moving it in a few moments. So it's warmed up a little bit. It's only 18 gauge, so it's not too bad. What we're going to do is just take this over to an even 90 first of all. Just kick the edges over, nice even strokes. Don't hit twice in one spot, you'll put a flat bit in. take it past itself, walk it back. Remember, if you jump about on the inside here, it doesn't matter too much because you're going to be covering it. As long as you're not over here somewhere in the middle of the material, just keep it back and keep it on there. It's cooled off a bit now. It's this middle bit a bit harder, but not too much. Like I say, it's only 18 gauge mild, so you could be doing this cold. And to be fair, it's just cold in the workshop, so I thought I'd warm things up a bit. If you do drift into the material, I have done just there, just find where it needs to be, walk it back across. So I'll give a little bit more heat on that, and then we'll get on to moving it around again a bit more. Key to it all is just take your time. Move it across. You see, when you get to these ends, it pulls the middle up again. So just kick that over. You can see it's splaying right open there. If we compare this in a minute to our measurement over there, we had 14.5 centimetres. That's opened right out now to 18, but that's no big deal. I'm going to cool the bottom down, give it another heat, and we'll get it back together. So back again, we'll just get this pushed down, use a flatter hammer now. I get this nice and crisp. We're taking it to 90 at the minute. Stay on top of that corner. In the middle here, just make sure if that starts to come up, just give it a tap, back down. There we go, so we're at 90, now we want to bring it just past 90. Get a smaller hammer. I could continue to use this hammer, the flat one here that I've got, but I much prefer using this slightly smaller one. So I'm going to bring that now back towards me over the bick. So it's still a bit warm. Get it couched into the hip and just gently bring it back. Put up with the heat from this as long as you can, because it means everything's nice and warm. Now if I lift that off there and I start hitting here, I'm going to bend the whole piece. So make sure that the parent of the material is on. Put it down, down. Even passes, you want to keep that edge as straight as you can. Getting very warm. It's getting away from me a bit here. What I mean from that is, on this end here, it's not very crisp here, it's more of a fold. I want to put that crispness back in. So before I take that down, I'm going to drop it in. There we go, get that crispness into that corner and carry on just bringing it over. Just evening it off, try and get the wrinkles out. I'll come back to haunt you if not. Now, there are multiple ways to make these. This is the way I was taught, with a few little adaptations just to suit myself. But there are different ways. You can get tools that go in there and you just bring them over the tool. Some people put the first turn in first, whatever. It's just a way, and I think that's important to say. Just use whatever works for you. Just use whatever works for you and the way that you work. So what I'm going to do now is, where I've taken it across, it's a little bit thinner here than it is at the ends, which means when we roll that over we'll end up with a sort of larger piece here thinning to larger. I don't think I've ever seen that. It tends to be thin, thick, thin, or even all the way across. So I'm just going to offer this up on the bench grinder there and just take those edges back so it's a bit nicer when we're finished, and then we'll start the actual turning of the piece. So happy now. I'm just going to start to bring this over a bit more into the hip. Gentle tap. You see, I don't need to go mad. At the moment I'm working this cold, just to show you can. Take it over. I'm going to tidy this one up a bit more. There we go. So to about that angle you can see down here where we need to be. And then what we're going to do, we're going to break that piece of material there. Catch that in the light. That small piece that lip we've just put in, I'm going to kick it over. You can do it hot, you can do it cold. I'll probably do a bit of both just to show that you can. Certainly if you're using high carbon steels, get in there with a bit of heat. But a little bit of mild like this, you should. Careful even passes. Be able to turn that edge over. Be careful that you don't put any divots in here, dinks and dents. Oh, you see them all over original pieces, but you know, try and avoid them. Just because you can see them, you should try not to make them. Keep that around, walking that over. So we're slowly turning that edge over. What I'll do is I'll try and stick the camera over my shoulder and we'll get a look straight down at what we're doing. Hopefully make it a bit clearer as well. Hopefully I won't go sticking my shoulder in the way. But we're just about there now to start bringing that back. We've turned that over nicely. It's not quite broken there. You can see it's almost just like a roll. So we need to push him back a bit. And do it. There we go. Just start to break them down now. Bring it over. Nice and tight. That's it coming. working it around. So you can see what I've done is I've lifted it up, I'm turning it over. At the moment it looks a bit like a capital P more than it does a triangle. It's not really turned over on this corner, so I might apply some heat on there. We'll just lift that out in a minute with a screwdriver, something along those lines. It's not turned really, so I'm thinking about the filming. I'm not concentrating, I guess, I don't know, or I've just made a mistake. One of the two, but we'll see if we can get him over. If not, I'll just lift him out. There we go, it's going. So just walking it round along the top edge now. Try not to mark the material, it will happen, but it's coming in on that broken edge now. Come down a bit more from straight down if it's not quite turned yet. Go. What's happening. Where I'm hitting it now is more along this edge. It's more along this edge where the light is, so that I'm compressing that top down and it's starting to form one side of my triangle. When I'm happy that's smooth enough, a couple of dinks. Lift them out. Break that edge in, you can see there I'm forming that line. Where you can see it's definitely curved and it hits the flat part. That's what we want it to do. Notice so we've got quite a gap yet between the parent material and the edge. Down that way, there you go. So I'll do now is get it over and start working the back edge of this triangle. Brace it into the hip and away we go. You see how we're breaking that top edge and you're starting to see the triangle forming. So I'll walk this round a couple more passes and then we'll come back and see where we're at. So what I've done is a couple more passes, started to tie it down now to the plate here. I'm just tidying things up, trying to make sure my line's relatively straight. I don't want it going crisscrossing its way down the work. So I'm just working my way along, re-establishing or reaffirming rather this ridge here that you can see starting to form. And again on the top. You just keep on reaffirming this line, showing it where it's meant to be. So you're satisfied it's more or less there, and just walk it down so it touches this. Then when you're to within about a mil of being in touch with it, remember we're going to put this back round, so that'll pull that down nice and tightly onto the piece of material. Then you give it a file and a polish. And you should be just about done. So I'll do those bits there, I'll give that a few more touches on here. Let's get a bit crisper on the top. Then we'll give it a file and a polish, and we'll see exactly where we're at. So what I've done is I've just continued planishing that down with the hammer. You can work it down rough and then leave it rough, to be fair. There's an awful lot of armour like that. I suggest go looking at somebody like Fred Reel of Reel Armories, RYALL Armories. He does polish bits and pieces, but he is a master of just leaving stuff rough from the hammer. Whereas what I've done here is polished that up and tidied it up a bit. There's a little dink just inside there, might pick it up in the light, but that's okay, that's okay. Like I say, you gotta look at the originals, and some of them are awful, some of them are exquisite, certainly better than this, worse than this, and I'd rate this sort of in the middle of them somewhere, so certainly good enough for the work that it's going to be doing. Fairly straightforward, I think you'll agree, to put a triangular edge on something, and you can just keep going, but be careful when you do file this down. Either use hand files like I do, just to start them off, or if you're going on a buffing wheel and you're doing electronically like I've done on the finish here, just be careful. Remember, this is only 18 gauge and we've already turned and abused it quite a bit, so it could look nice but it could be paper thin. So you have to be careful for that sort of thing as well.